all, I believe you have a new CD that's entitled Keep On Rocking. How close to completion are you, and do you have a release date?
Well, it started out being Keep On Rocking, but I think it may be Rockin' the Blues now.
Okay.
And it's more than half completed and has a lot of interesting guest appearances on it. Slash is on a song called Rebel Road, and I have a couple of country rock songs that Clint Black is singing and playing harp on, and my brother Johnny, of course, is on the title song, Rockin' the Blues. And you know, we actually, it's still undecided yet. We might end up calling it Rebel Road. The reason I was calling it Rockin' the Blues is because it's the third part of my blues trilogy, which started out with Winter Blues, and then I did Jazz in the Blues, and there is a song on here called Rockin' the Blues. But we had this song Rebel Road that we really like, and you know, the album could end up changing to that title. So
okay.
Only time will tell. Rock and roll.
There you go. When you put an album together, Edgar, is it something that just sort of comes to you? Do you try to keep it within a time frame, or how do you handle that?
Yes, it definitely evolves a life of its own, and I'm very thankful to be in a position where, unlike the old days, where artists had to put out a couple of albums a year, I can take my time and let it evolve more organically. And in the case of these guest artists that I was mentioning, when you start that process, it does take on a life of its own, and I think that's the best way, you know, to do it. Back when I used to make records, it was more of a band effort, and a lot of the time we would actually write songs in the studio, and that hardly ever happens these days. There aren't that many record deals out there to be had, but when you got them back then, you pretty much had a free hand, and a lot of times bands would come in with 2 or 3 songs and actually sit down in the studio, come up with riffs, and actually create music right there on the spot. And I think that accounts for a lot of the magic and the sense of freedom about that music. You know, I hope that carries on into my later career. That's the way I've always viewed music. I love all styles and have never felt comfortable being forced into, you know, any particular niche, you know. And you know, if I've tried to do anything throughout my career, it's sort of to broaden musical horizons and make people aware of all the music, you know, all the great music that's out there, and try to eliminate what I think of as some of the senseless musical prejudices that exist. I've never been able to understand why people who love classical can't appreciate rock, or why the people who dig jazz, you know, can't get into country. And, you know, then you have, like, artists like a Bruce Hornsby, you know, who's a fluid jazz player, but his music still retains that sincerity and simplicity of country. And you've got people like Sting with a jazz sensibility, and, you know, Paul McCartney I love a lot, Stevie Wonder. But all those guys, you know, tend to cross genres. So I think it's interesting. Keeps it fresh that way.
Absolutely. When you have a guest artist like Slash, do you lay down tracks, and does he just go into a studio and sort of lay down riffs from there, or do you meet with him and work on the songs, or how does that work?
Yeah, in that particular case, it can happen all kinds of different ways. But with Rebel Road, some friends of mine, Kurt Cuomo and James Baker. Kurt used to be a drummer, and James is a guitar player, and Kurt has a studio that he owns, so that made it easy in that had free access to the studio, and we had thought that we should write a sort of a biker anthem, because I do a lot of those events, and I did the Love Ride with Jay Leno, and we do the Buffalo Chips, the Sturgis, that one, and we've done some of the Easy Rider events as well, and Free Ride has always been popular, and I thought, well, we should have a new one of those. So Rebel Road was the idea that we came up with. I've always considered myself sort of a musical rebel, and I think that musicians and bikers they have in common the fact they sort of a disregard of authority and the powers that be. We're not 9-to-5ers, and I thought that song would just be perfect. It's really a flat out rocker, and I thought Slash would be the guitarist, to invite to do that. And we had met back in 2000 when President Clinton, they had that new Millennium celebration that had just about everybody from Muhammad Ali to Sophia Loren, and huge choir, and there was a band that was one of those all-star bands with John Fogerty that was for the rock part of it, and Slash and I were both in that. That's when I met him. So I knew him well enough to just call him up and suggest it, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So
terrific.
He came in, and we did it all in one evening. And the rock and roll songs aren't really rocket science. It's not that hard. Sometimes people want to, like you. It's so easy now. You can just email. An MP3 of the song if somebody wants to hear it beforehand, and you can even figure out ways of doing it when you're not even face to face. Remotely from one location to another. Technology is amazing these days.
It is. It is. Now, your project that you're working on, is it going to be all new material?
Yeah. It I'm sure will be. And I said I'm co-writing. I probably will co-write some things with other people as well. David Grohl, with the Foo Fighters, he's another guy that I would like to collaborate with, and Billy Gibbons with ZZ Top. There's a song called "Oh No No" that I'd like to get him on, and it's just a work in progress. We'll see how it goes, but I don't know if we'll finish it before the end of the year, but it'll just be whenever it gets done.
Okay. You had mentioned technology with the advent of the internet. How difficult is it to protect your music?
I don't think that there is any way of protecting intellectual property of any kind these days. It's I really think of recording really as much in the same way people viewed video. That's really a promotional tool. Once anything gets on the net, everybody's going to have it, and it's just a sign of the times. That is the way it is, and all the young people that grow up with computers, to them, free access is just second nature, and they don't think anything of exchanging stuff. They don't have any feeling of it being unethical in any way. And of course, from the artist's point of view, it makes it impossible to, as you said, to protect the music. But I've always really felt like music. It is, it must have started out in a very primitive way with people like dancing around a fire and sounds from nature. It's a free kind of a thing, and it seems natural to me that it would go that it would go in that direction. So I think you just have to change with the time.
When you were the last year, you've been touring. If my information is correct, you've been touring a lot in the States, but also in Europe.
Yes.
Are the audiences different between the States and Europe, and do you find that the audiences are made up primarily of baby boomers, or they are younger, or a mix, or what?
We have all kinds. They are definitely different. I think that the European audiences in general are maybe a little more educated, more attentive. The Americans are just like party, rock and roll, and then in Japan, they're again somewhat different in that there's so much discipline over there. They're not allowed to smoke and stand up and jump around. It's a lot more orderly. But they'll sit there very politely and listen to a whole song and then erupt into mad applause at the end. But it's all fun to me, and I enjoy especially playing for people of all ages. I like those outdoor festivals, picnic type, where there are picnic type situations where there are kids, teenagers, young adults and older people as well. I think music is pretty universal. I think rock and blues has emerged as a music form that bridges those generational gaps. Everybody seems to enjoy it, and I consider myself really fortunate to have been around in the beginning and survived through it, and
there you go.
To be doing what I most love and would do anyway, regardless if I had a career or was getting paid for it. I'd be playing, whether it's the club down the street or Madison Square Garden. It's just so much fun. I mean, once you start playing, there's something that will stay with you.
Now, you recently started playing with the Ringo Starr All-Star Band. Is that not correct?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I wrote Ringo as another person that might be involved in the Rock and the Blues project. Wrote a song called Peace and Love that I dedicated to Ringo, and he is a great. He was a great inspiration and is a spokesman for that ideal. And I love the fact that it's that it's so pure and without agenda on his part. It's not peace and love, therefore this or that.
How did you become? I'm sorry, but how did you become introduced to Ringo?
Ringo, mean, I've wanted to do that ever since it started long ago, and I guess finally my number just came up. Just decided that it would be cool, and it happened. I heard about it from my friend and manager Jake, and as soon as he said, "Would you be interested in doing that?" I said, "Oh man." We had talked about it actually before, so I had not met Ringo. I had met Paul and John Lennon, but I never met George, and I had not met Ringo, up to that point. So it was a real thrill for me. I mean, I woke up every morning, wow, I'm going to be on stage with one of the Beatles. They're, as far as I'm concerned, they're in a class unto themselves, and they just what an amazing body of work they left.
Any interesting behind-the-scenes stories about being part of that?
Yeah, we had some crazy stuff happening, but it was so much. Not any particular stories, but Ringo's just one of the coolest guys ever. I mean, he's a great sense of humor, and on and off stage, and he travels in style, and that was really great to walk right off stage and get in a limo and go right to the private jet and on to the next place. Unlike some of the grueling tours that I do, where we're in a minivan driving from one place to another and having to depend on the airlines. But no, it was just it was great fun, and it was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life, and I loved meeting all the other people that were in the band. It was Ringo and Sheila E. playing drums, and the guitarists were Billy Squire and Richard Mark, and also the guy that played with the Zombies, the keyboard player.
Oh, I can't. I should be.
Rod Argent.
There you go.
Yeah, Rod Argent, and myself on keyboards. It was really a fun band, and everybody really came together in an amazingly short period of time to form a real band, and check their egos at the door, and where everybody was really, very supportive, not only of Ringo but of one another in all the solo spots. It was one of those magical things.
That's great. Now, you're going to be appearing Super Bowl Sunday at Donald Trump's golf resort located on the Rancho Palos Verdes Peninsula. Mm-hmm. How did you become involved with this charity event?
Well, once again, we're just out there playing, and we're really excited to be a part of it. I heard about it, from Jake, and and it also always makes it nice when you feel that in addition there is a charitable aspect to it as well. I really feel that that's a big part of music is giving something back. So whenever that opportunity comes around, we're always there. When I did a lot of those 9/11 things, when they happened, and we're really looking forward to this. And of course, I love football, coming from Texas.
Well, does that make you a Cowboy fan? Or?
Well, it would make me a Cowboy fan, I guess. This year, they're Tony Romo. They're doing pretty good.
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. Do you follow any other teams, or is it primarily the Cowboys?
No, I don't. When it gets close to the Super Bowl is when I get interested. I'm really, pretty much into music. I mean, back in the 70s, I was a real Cowboys fan, and I sort of phased out of it, but now I'm getting back into it again. So,
There you go.
I guess the Patriots? Are they still?
Patriots
New England still undefeated?
They still are.
Yeah.
They still are.
Yeah.
And I'm sad to say that. I'm a big Steeler fan, and the Patriots just don't. They're a good team.
Uh-huh.
And actually, my business partner's son actually works for the Cowboys.
Oh, okay.
He's doing very well for them. You mentioned the 70s. Your 1973 hit, Frankenstein. I would imagine it probably changed the direction of your career. Was that the success from that one hit, was that a positive thing for you musically, or did you find it a hindrance at all?
No, it was totally a positive thing, and I think interesting in that it was a song that we were not originally going to include on the album. It was a song that I had written years earlier when I was playing with my brother Johnny, and it was an untitled song. And with the advent of the synthesizer, I'd been looking for something to showcase the synthesizer. And we used to call this thing the double drum song because when I played with my brother, I played Hammond organ and alto sax, and I did a dual drum solo. We had two sets of drums on stage. So I thought, wow, that old song would sound cool with that subsonic reinforced synth bottom. So we worked up a version of it to play live, and also a big aspect of it was the fact that I was the first guy to come up with the idea of putting a strap on the keyboard, because I had played piano and organ and got really frustrated being stuck behind a big bank of keyboards. Why do these guitar players get to have all the fun? I want to get out there and boogie. So I was in the music store and looking at these new synthesizers, and there was the Moog, and then there was the ARP, the ARP, and the ARP 2600 had a lightweight remote keyboard with a big cable, and I took a look at it and said, wow, it looks like you could just pick this thing up and put a strap on it and play it, which is exactly what I proceeded to do. So that was when we got the idea of an instrumental to showcase it, and after we started playing it live, we never thought about recording it, because it was like such a long thing. It was like 10 or 15 minutes long, with drum and timbali solos and sax and synthesizer, and it didn't really seem to relate to the other material on the album that we were doing. I really felt like the strength of the Edgar Winter group lay in the co-writing with Dan Hartman and myself. And Free Ride was a song that we thought would be the big hit. So anyway, at the end of the thing, we had these versions of it, which we just happened to have recorded because the song was fun to play, and when we'd come into the studio, we'd usually start out with that to warm up. So back in those days, as I had mentioned before, things were actually written in the studio, so that, like, one of the cardinal rules was tape should always be rolling. So we had these long 15, 20-minute versions of this thing, and Rick Derringer said, well, why don't we see if we could edit that down into something that we could use? And said, well, that sounds like kind of a crazy idea, but I love crazy ideas. So it seemed like a good excuse to get even more blasted than usual and have like a big end of the project party. So we had the thing. Back in those days, the only way to edit something was by physically cutting the tape and then putting it back together. So it was lying all over the control room, draped over the backs of chairs, and all over the console. And we were trying to figure out how to put it back together. And Chuck Ruff, the drummer, mumbled the immortal words, wow, man, it's like Frankenstein, drawing the analogy of an arm here and a leg there. So as soon as I heard it, I said, wow, that's it.
Is that how it got titled?
The monster was born.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it got the name. Was people would assume that that it was like had something to do with the movie or the book or my identification with the Frankenstein monster, but it was actually from the thing being all cut up and pieced back together again. And I thought of myself as sort of the mad scientist of the synthesizer and the song Frankenstein as the monster creation. And it also made sense to me on that level of technology running amok with the introduction of the synthesizer. I was variously acclaimed and accused of ushering in that whole era of the synthesizer that a lot of people thought was dehumanizing music. And I had a whole different approach to the synthesizer, whereas a lot of other people were using it to emulate the sounds of already existing instruments, like a grand piano or string section or whatever. I loved all the old sci-fi movies with theremin and synth, like Forbidden Planet, and I said, we got a brand new instrument here. Let's create never before heard sounds. So that was the whole idea behind Frankenstein. And you were saying, like the way in which it changed or redirected my career, I think that from that point on, it was a very sort of dramatic and dynamic sort of image with me with the keyboard being the first person to do that. And I really don't think of myself as my favorite instrument is saxophone, and a lot of people don't even know that I play that. They think of me as a keyboard player, and I did play keyboards first. But also, I think that Frankenstein is sort of a precursor of heavy metal and fusion music, and I like that aspect of it, that it has a sort of also has a bit of a jazz influence. So it was one of those songs that was sort of experimental, in its way. So I like being on the new frontier, on the cutting edge of the new frontier there.
Because it was an instrumental, Edgar, did you run into any problems with getting it released as a single or getting it played?
Well, it was just released as the B-side of another song that was actually supposed to be the single. We never, as I said, when we put it on the album, there was never any thought about releasing it as a single. The whole thing happened as a result of college FM underground radio picking up that song, as a B-side of a single, and it was totally a spontaneous grassroots kind of a thing, where it started getting play and more play and more play, and all of a sudden the AM stations were asking for it, so we then re-released it, as a single, and then we re-released Free Ride after that, which became a big hit as well. Mm-hmm. So really, it was Frankenstein enabled Free Ride to become a hit, because we'd released Free Ride previously, and it didn't even get on the charts. So it just demonstrates, the power of once people are listening, that a song, there are literally thousands of great songs that never become hits simply because they're never discovered, they're never heard, and it was very fortuitous, convergence of events there, that allowed that to happen, and it really did launch my career. So I'm forever grateful for that having happened, and I really think it also demonstrates a principle to me that just a lot of times when you try to predetermine and calculate and figure out what what is commercial and what people are going to want to hear, a lot of times the the song that you just do for fun, which is exactly what Frankenstein was, is the song that really will resonate with people, and that's entirely what that song was all about. None of us really took it seriously, and it ended up being the thing that opened the door.
Now, much of your work has also been featured in soundtracks of feature films. I think My Cousin Vinny, Wayne's World 2. I think you have some influence.
Wag the Dog.
There you go.
Yeah, Wag the Dog and My Cousin Vinny. I wrote songs specifically for those movies, and I really like writing for the movies. Willie Nelson sang "Good Old Shoe" was the song that was in Wag the Dog. Willie Nelson and Pop Staples sang that song, and it's a lot of fun, and get to hang out on the set and meet some of the stars and get into the whole movie making process. And from a writing viewpoint, you've got you already have a story, so it makes it really easy to write, because there's one of the things about writing is that initially getting a song idea, and the movie really helps because it's already there, so you have something to start with.
I would imagine that's a pretty gratifying experience to be able
it's great to walk into the theater. The first My Cousin Vinny was the first one, and I had no idea how the song was going to be featured on that one. I did on Wag the Dog, but we walked in, and it was the first song that opened the movie. We were driving down the highway, and it is one of those car radio kind of songs. A lot of my fondest memories of rock and roll are in cars driving along, driving down the highway with the volume pumped up, and that was one of those kind of songs. So it worked perfectly in that place.
So each project that you would work on as far as a feature film, it varies as far as how much you know about the film itself when you're writing?
Yeah, sometimes you don't. Well, you always know something about what the film is about, but you don't always have an opportunity to look at any of it. And like it's always different. And then like in Wag the Dog, I only got involved in it after the song. That was that was one of those things. They wanted a song called "Good Old Shoe" because I don't know if you saw that movie, but
I did.
It was supposed to be a song that was an old blues song to aggrandize this guy Schumann or Shoemaker or whatever who was a really non-existent hero that was created in this war. So the name of the song had to be "Good Old Shoe," and they wanted it to sound like an old blues song, like back from the 20s or 30s. So it was a huge cattle call where they had thousands of submissions, and I didn't even really take it seriously. They said, "Oh, they're looking for this song. We got to have a blues song called 'Good Old Shoe.'" So I just wrote it in a day and recorded it with a slide guitar and a vocal, no other instruments, and sent it in. And I was just amazed. The next day they said, "Oh, this is it." And then I got to go and meet everybody and find out more about what it was about.
That's really cool. Future projects? Anything you're working on other than the album that you're looking forward to?
Well, I have I'm working on a Broadway musical version of Frankenstein, a musical comedy, and that I've been doing for years actually. But that's coming along, and let's see if there's anything else really. I'll probably be doing more with my brother Johnny. He's working on his next release as well. So I'm sure that he and I will probably write some together. And there's talk about a UK tour next year in the spring. I'll be looking forward to doing that. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, it sounds pretty exciting. Edgar, we really appreciate you taking the time. I've been a fan.
You're entirely welcome. You're gonna be there at the show?
You sure will be.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Isn't Leon Russell on this?
Yes, he is.
And Leon, I love Leon. We're really, really good friends, and I played with Leon for almost 3 years back in the '80s. As a matter of fact, we did. We went to Russia for a thing called the Music Summit to foster better international relations through music, and this was when Gorbachev was in power, and all the American bands, Pink Floyd had just gone over there. The American bands were going over there for the first time. It was really, really a great experience. So I'm looking forward to seeing Leon again.
Do you think there's any chance the two of you might jam a little bit together?
Yeah, there's always a chance. I love jamming. That's what it's all about. So I'm definitely going to ask him. If he asks me, I'll be there in a second.